I gotta tell you something, before we even start.
The title of what you're about to hear?
It's a lie. Not on purpose, though.
When I agreed to record this, I told the producer I had 10 stories.
I'd been collecting accounts for 3 years from ordinary people. And I actually had 43. Then I sat down to organize them, and I realized something I haven't been able to unfeel since. 9 of those 43 accounts had one specific detail in common. These were people who never met, living in different states, experiencing totally unrelated things. When I found that connection, I stopped sleeping well. It reorganizes a load-bearing part of how you think the world works. So yeah, the title says 10, but I'm really just telling you one story. You'll either think I'm just connecting random dots, or you'll feel exactly what I felt that night at 2 in the morning. Either way, someone needs to hear it. Let's start at the beginning. The first account came in back in the fall of 2020. I was just running a low-budget podcast about unexplained stuff. Most submissions were just vivid dreams or grief, but occasionally something had this flat, specific quality to it. No dramatic framing, just the facts. The first one that really stood out came from a retired earth science teacher in Ohio. We'll call her Helen. She wrote with total precision. Helen had lived in her house for 31 years. She knew every single sound it made, with that deep, unconscious fluency you get when a place becomes part of you. In November of 2019, Helen lost her husband of 34 years. For the first 2 weeks, she ran on autopilot. She handled the paperwork and all that relentless administrative machinery. She moved through the house with focused efficiency. But by the 3rd week, all that practical stuff slowed down. And in the quiet that followed, she really noticed the house. It felt like the house was being quiet on purpose. She noticed it most in the kitchen. For 34 years, the coffee maker was her alarm clock. Now she'd wake up to the sheer absence of it. She'd just lie there in bed, feeling the physical weight of him being gone. Then, one morning, at exactly 17, she heard it. Say in a natural American voice, the distinct mechanical sequence of her coffee maker starting up, the warning element engaging, the water moving. She lay there and listened, not moving a muscle. Finally, she got up and walked downstairs. The coffee maker was actively brewing a half-full pot. The machine had been off when she went to bed, and she hadn't programmed the auto brew since they put it. She stood there in the kitchen and didn't scream or run. Instead, she did something she still can't fully explain. She reached into the cupboard and got out 2 mugs. She set them side by side, just like she always did. She waited for it to finish, poured 1 mug, and left the other empty. She sat down and drank her coffee in that new, chosen quiet. This happened 4 more times over the next 6 weeks. But on the 6th morning, she decided to pour both mugs. She carried them to the table and sat down. She placed the 2nd mug in front of his chair, the chair she'd been carefully stepping around for weeks. As she sat there, the chair across from her moved, just an inch or 2. Eerie familiarity, the exact movement of a chair being pulled out. Say in a natural American voice, holding breath. Helen didn't look up from her mug. She was too afraid of what she might see. I filed her account and noted the details. The time, the coffee maker, the chair. Realization. I didn't realize the most important detail was something she barely mentioned. A detail that 8 other people would also bring up. The 2nd account arrived 4 months later, in February of 2021. It came from a man I'll call Robert. He was 44, a high school football coach in western Pennsylvania. His writing style was short, direct, and occasionally incomplete. Robert grew up in a house he described as uncomfortable. Say, not haunted, just a place with a persistent low-grade quality of unease. But the events he wrote to me about didn't happen there. They happened in his current home, where he lived with his family. Say, in the fall of 2020, Robert's older son came downstairs with a strange report.
He said he'd heard someone in the hallway outside his bedroom around 2 in the morning.
He described the sound as slow footsteps.
Moving from one end of the hallway to the other, and back. Robert told his son it was probably just the house settling. He gave the standard explanation about old construction and temperature changes.
Wood expanding and contracting in the night.
His son accepted the explanation without question.
But it happened again 3 nights later.
His son reported it in the morning, just noting it like a recurring oddity.
Robert decided to lie awake the following night and wait.
He wanted to see if he could hear it himself.
At 1:50 in the morning, he heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. They were slow and deliberate, with the specific weight of a person walking on hardwood.
He listened as they moved down the hall, paused, and walked back. In a natural American voice, urgent action. Robert got up and immediately opened his bedroom door.
The hallway was completely empty. He checked on both of his sons, who were fast asleep.
He searched the entire house, but found absolutely nothing. This continued for 6 weeks. In a natural American voice, rhythmic dread. Footsteps in the hallway, between 1 and 2 in the morning. In a natural American voice, exhausted. Robert began sleeping lightly, waking at every single sound.
The sleep deprivation took a toll, and he lost 11 pounds.
He had the house inspected for animals and hired a contractor to check the floors.
They found absolutely no structural issues.
Desperate for answers, he set up an old baby monitor at one end of the hallway.
He left it running to record all night.
He reviewed the footage every morning.
On 4 separate nights, the camera recorded nothing visually unusual.
In a natural American voice, but the sound was there, captured cleanly on the audio.
In a natural American voice. Measured, slow footsteps on hardwood, with nothing visible making them.
On the 39th night, the pattern finally broke.
Robert was wide awake when the footsteps stopped right outside his younger son's room.
He heard them approach, pause, and then he heard the bedroom door open.
He was out of bed and into the hallway in 4 seconds flat. But when he got there, his younger son's door was completely closed. He grabbed the handle and threw it open, expecting the worst.
His son was fast asleep in bed. The room was entirely empty, with no sign of anyone having been there. In a natural American doorway and listen to the completely silent house for 2 straight hours.
The footsteps never came back, but the next morning, his younger son casually mentioned a dream. He said someone came to check on him in the night, stood in the doorway, and then left. In a natural American voice. His son told him, "I knew it wasn't you, Dad. You always come all the way in." Robert shared one final detail.
His own father, who died 8 months prior, had a lifelong habit of checking on his kids every night.
I added Robert's account to my file, noting the specific details about his father, the footsteps, and the door. I noted the small, personal habit that had manifested after death.
Then, I moved on to the next submission.
The third account came in March of 2021 from a woman named Sandra. She was a 53-year-old paramedic supervisor in Colorado. Because of her profession, she had a relationship with mortality that was clinical and entirely unsentimental. She wrote about her mother, who died in hospice after a long decline from Alzheimer's. Sandra had been her primary caregiver for 4 years. By the time she passed, Sandra's grief was complicated, extended, and largely complete. 3 weeks after her mother's death, Sandra began finding things moved in her apartment.
It was nothing dramatic.
In a natural American voice, a book shifted on her nightstand, a photograph turned around, or a throw pillow repositioned on the couch. Sandra noticed these changes with the careful attention of a trained observer. She knew her baseline. She checked her locks, had them rekeyed, and confirmed there were no vulnerabilities. Nothing was being taken. Things were simply being moved. After 2 weeks, she came home from a 24-hour shift. She walked into her living room and froze. Her armchair had been moved. It faced the window instead of the TV, with a pillow placed for sitting.
Sandra sat on the couch and stared at the chair.
Her mom had loved that spot. Before the Alzheimer's, she'd visit and sit exactly there. She liked facing the window, to look out at the trees. For years, Sandra moved that chair to face the window when her mom visited. Then she'd move it back when she left. It was a tiny accommodation.
Now, the chair was facing the window again.
She hasn't moved it back since. Sometimes, in the evenings, she sits on the couch and talks to the empty chair. You aren't sure if they can hear you, but you'd rather be heard. After the chair moved, the rearranging completely stopped.
Sandra realized her mom always had this gentle habit of organizing spaces.
She'd make small adjustments, like pushing a book flush with a table edge. Say in a natural American voice. During the 2 years her mom's mind was fading, that specific habit became unbearably precious. The things moving in her apartment weren't random. They were moved with her mom's exact sense of order.
I added Sandra's account to my file.
Without realizing it, I had now collected the thread 3 times. I need to pause here and tell you something about this thread. The thread connecting these stories isn't dramatic. It's not a ghostly apparition or a terrifying sound. It's a personal detail. A habit that somehow manifests after death, right in the space of their loved one. Think about it. Helen's husband made the coffee every morning for 34 years. Robert's dad checked on his kids in the night. Sandra's mom moved things, quietly setting the world to rights. 3 dead people. 3 sets of highly specific behaviors appearing right after they died. I know grief plays tricks on the mind, but the next accounts stretch that explanation to its breaking point.
The 4th account came in June of 2021 from a man I'll call Paul.
He was 38, an architect living in Chicago. His account was the first one that made me stop reading and just sit very still for a moment. Paul's older brother had died in a car accident that January.
It was sudden, no warning. The kind of death that doesn't negotiate. His brother had been a man who called Paul every Sunday morning.
Reliably, predictably, every Sunday between 9 and 10. He'd done it for the 11 years since Paul moved to Chicago. It was the rhythm of their relationship, its weekly heartbeat. Paul told me he hadn't fully understood how much of his connection was built on that rhythm. Not until the first Sunday after the funeral, when 9 o'clock arrived and his phone didn't ring. Say, 8 Sundays after his brother's death, Paul's phone rang. He told me he counted every single one of those Sundays.
It was 9:20 in the morning.
He was standing in his kitchen. He looked down at the screen. It was his brother's number. He stared at it for the full length of the ring. 4 rings. He didn't answer. He told me he didn't know if he was afraid of what he would hear, or if he was afraid of what he wouldn't hear. When I heard Paul use the exact same phrase Helen used, I wrote it down and underlined it. Paul called his carrier. The call was logged as an incoming call from his brother's number. He checked with his sister-in-law, who was handling the estate. She confirmed his brother's phone had been deactivated in February. A deactivated number cannot originate a call. But the call originated from his brother's number. He told me he's not sure he'll ever know what he would have heard, because his brother's number never called him again.
But the thing he comes back to most is the timing.
Say in a natural American voice. Specific? 9:20. Not 9 o'clock. Not exactly on the hour. Approximately the time his brother usually called. Not precise. Say in a natural American voice. Profound. Human. And then he told me the thing that stopped me.
Say in a natural American voice. His brother had a specific habit when he called on Sunday mornings.
He almost always called while he was doing something else.
Making breakfast, driving, getting ready for the day.
And he had a specific way of beginning every single one of those calls.
He always started by saying Paul's name.
Not hello.
Not hey.
Just Paul's name. Said in a particular way, like he was confirming the right person had answered. Say, in a natural American voice, his first thought wasn't about the impossibility of it.
Say in a natural American voice. His first thought was, he's just calling to say my name.
I'm not going to comment on that.
I'm going to let it sit exactly where he put it and move to the fifth account.
Say in a natural American voice. The fifth account came from a woman I'll call Teresa.
She was 66 years old, a retired librarian in New Mexico.
And she had been sitting on her account for 9 years before she sent it to me.
Teresa's daughter had died in 2012.
She was 28 years old.
Her daughter had been a person of extraordinary physical energy.
A hiker? A runner? Someone who experienced the world primarily through her body's engagement with it.
When she visited Teresa, she spent those visits in a state of perpetual motion. Her daughter had this habit whenever she visited New Mexico.
Every morning before Teresa was awake, she'd go outside and water the garden.
She just noticed the plants needed it, and she was already up.
Teresa kept that garden exactly the same for 9 years. She was quick to say it wasn't a memorial, just a garden. It had the same plants and the exact same schedule of what needed doing.
Then, in the spring of 2013, a year after her daughter passed, Teresa woke up to find wet soil in the garden.
She hadn't watered it.
She checked the spigot, but there was no leak, and it hadn't rained in days. She just noted it and went about her day, but it happened again 6 weeks later.
Say, in a natural morning, with zero explanation for where the water came from.
This time, she documented it.
She took photos and even had a neighbor check the spigot.
Over the next 2 years, it happened 11 times.
Always in the spring or summer, always in the morning, and never with a logical explanation. Teresa documented every single instance with the careful, methodical attention of a retired librarian. She looked into every rational explanation, from underground moisture to weird condensation, but she couldn't ignore the biggest detail.
The wet soil wasn't random.
It was always in the exact same spot.
Say, in a natural American realization, the specific section her daughter used to water.
Teresa told me she goes outside every morning now and puts her hand in that soil before doing anything else.
Say in a natural American voice, peaceful and slow. When it's wet, she just sits there for a while. She isn't scared of it. She says it feels like being remembered.
I added Teresa's account to my file.
I now had 5 accounts sitting there, and the thread connecting them was 5 accounts long. I hadn't named what that thread was yet, but the pattern was getting impossible to ignore. I'm going to move through the next 3 accounts a bit faster, because by now you're probably feeling the shape of the thread yourself. The 6th account came from a guy whose wife died in 2018.
For 22 years, she was always the one who turned off the lights before bed.
3 months later, he'd wake up to find lights turned off in rooms he knew he left on.
The log showed them turning off in her exact order. The 7th account was a woman whose dad always straightened crooked pictures. After he died, every picture was perfectly leveled.
The 8th account came from a man whose grandmother died in 2019.
She lived with his family for 3 years and had one unwavering habit. Say in a natural American voice. Every day, at exactly 4 in the afternoon, she'd make tea.
It was a ritual she performed the exact same way for 40 years.
After her death, the kitchen kettle began switching on by itself at 4.
He documented it on video 3 times, finding no explanation.
He stopped telling his 7-year-old son about her. But on the 3rd time, his son walked into the kitchen, saw the steaming kettle,
and said without any drama, "Great-grandma must be thirsty."
That makes 8. I told you at the beginning that I found the thread in 9 accounts.
The 9th one is mine. I didn't include it initially when I spread the accounts across my table.
But when I found the thread in the first 8, I sat at that table at 2 in the morning and thought about my own experience.
I realized I'd been sitting on the 9th account for 3 years. My father died in September of 2019 from heart failure. He died in a hospital in the city where I grew up, and I was with him at the end.
Say in a natural American voice, moving forward, 10 days later, I flew back to my apartment.
My father had never been to my apartment. He wasn't a traveler, so I always went to him.
There was nothing in my place that had ever been his.
Nothing that should have reminded me of him.
But my father was a whistler.
He whistled the way other people hum, unconsciously, continuously. He had a repertoire of about 6 old standards, and he always went slightly flat on the 3rd bar.
Say, in a natural American voice, I was in my kitchen making dinner.
It was an ordinary evening, and I wasn't thinking about my father.
Then I heard whistling coming from the living room. It was low, unhurried, and it was one of his 6 songs.
Say in a natural American voice, I knew it immediately, the particular way he whistled it, including that flat note. I stood in my kitchen with the knife in my hand, and I didn't move. It went on for about 45 seconds.
Then it just stopped.
I put the knife down and walked into the living room.
I'm not going to insult your intelligence by telling you what I found. There was nothing there.
I'll tell you what I did do, though. I sat right down on the floor in the middle of the room.
It's not exactly a normal thing to do, but my body just kind of gave out.
I sat there for a long time.
I heard it twice more over the next month, always in that room.
Always one of his songs, and always with that same flat note. And then it stopped.
I haven't heard it since. I'm not telling you this as proof.
I know I'm the least reliable narrator of my own grief.
But when I spread those 43 accounts across my table at 2 in the morning,
I finally saw the thread. I saw what connected my dad to the rest of them. In every single one of these 9 accounts, it's not a ghost story.
it's not some spirit trying to send a message.
It's something way more specific, and honestly, harder to explain. It's just habit.
The coffee maker,
The footsteps, the watered garden, the whistling.
They aren't doing anything extraordinary. They're just doing what they always did.
The most ordinary, unremarkable things that made them who they were. It's like habit is the absolute last thing to go. The body and the mind end, but the habit just keeps running for a bit. Like a river that keeps flowing after the rain stops. The water just hasn't been told to stop moving yet. I've thought about this every single day for a year. What does it mean that the thing that outlasts us isn't some grand gesture?
It's not our biggest moments.
It's the small, daily stuff we did without even thinking.
Which brings me to the 10th account.
the one I promised you at the start, when I said the title was a lie.
The 10th account isn't one I got in an email.
It's not in my files.
I can't give you a name or a date for it.
Because the 10th account is the one you're going to have someday.
It's a pattern.
Someone you love is going to leave their habit behind for you to find.
When that ordinary afternoon comes and the kettle turns on for no reason, you're going to have a choice.
The exact same choice Helen made with her 2 mugs.
The one Robert's son made, or Teresa when she touched the wet soil.
You'll have a choice about what kind of fear you're going to have. Because there are 2 kinds.
And they are very, very different.
The one you choose says something about what you believe. Say, in a natural American way. It says what you think the ordinary, unconsidered habits of a lifetime actually are.
Whether you think they're just mindless behavior,
Or whether there's something else entirely. Something that doesn't even have a name yet. Something that leaves the room exactly the way the person left it. Every single time.
as if it's been here all along. And it just needed you to stop looking for the dramatic version long enough to actually notice it.
I'm gonna stop talking now. I know you're probably looking at the dark corners of your room right now.
But what I actually want you to do is simpler than that.
Say, in a natural American voice, calm and instructive. Before you close this out and go back to your evening, just do this.
Think of the person you've loved the longest.
Think of the thing they do every single day without even noticing they do it.
That specific sound.
That tiny little habit.
The ordinary, completely irreplaceable specific of them.
Now that I've said it, you're going to remember it forever. 'Cause that right there,
That is the 10th story.
That's the one that's gonna stay with you.
long after I'm gone, long after the tape stops roll.
Saying in a natural American voice, peaceful resolution. It's the only one that matters.